You're about to start the trip of a lifetime in Japan, a country with a distinct climate, culture, and traditions that are uniquely its own, with a rich tapestry of unwritten rules and traditions. Many of these will be foreign to travelers visiting for the first time, but there are some clues to know that will prevent you from landing in hot water during your trip. After spending a decade in this fantastic country, here is what I wish I knew before coming to Japan. Cash is absolutely still king. Carry it at all times. Now this was a bit odd for me at first, where in my home country I would not carry more than a 20 at a time, and 100 would be unthinkable in case I got mugged, or much more likely just misplaced it. Now I feel uncomfortable going anywhere in the country with less than 30,000 yen, and this is on the lower end for what Japanese themselves will carry every day. Japan is a safe country, and while that doesn't mean you should be careless, carrying anything less than this could find yourself in some sticky situations down the line, not being able to pay at an establishment that only takes cash, or cause you to waste valuable travel time looking for ATMs at convenience stores after you decide to splurge on some activities. Every time I do mention this though, people inevitably tell me that they went to Tokyo and could find smart or tap-to-pay options, and yeah, that's true, Japan is adopting more cashless payments in recent years, and if you're just hanging out in Shinjuku or Shibuya, you'll probably be fine. But this does not represent the rest of Japan at all, and any traveler that spends time outside the major cities will know this. And here's the thing, there really is no downside to carrying 30 to 50,000 yen at a time. You can spend it all at the end of your trip, or just convert it back to your home currency. Or better yet, just keep it and use it the next time you visit Japan. But while we are talking about cash, this brings me to our next unspoken rule. Don't hand money directly from hand to hand in Japan if it can be avoided. When paying, there should be a tray at the register that looks like this, unless you're paying by a vending machine. There are situations where this isn't the case. Convenience stores, matsuri festivals, or more touristy spots have adapted to accommodate foreign travelers. It is still a courtesy to do this if able to, so if you see the tray, then use it. If there is none in view, then feel free to pay by hand. But here is the ultimate cash tip in Japan, because everyone that has been here knows just how frustrating it can be to deal with change, especially those 1 and 5 yen coins. Some people even make a point to go to Donkey to grab their viral change holder, but you don't need this with proper change management. Paying with exact change is of course preferred, but you can also overpay and round up to the nearest 100 or 1,000 yen to get a better change. This is a lifesaver in Japan. But we all do get lazy at times, especially after long days traveling, so if you find yourself overflowing with change after you keep breaking the big bills, simply get rid of as much as you can at the next vending payment. Vending machines for drinks or train stations usually will not take 1 or 5 yen coins, but supermarkets and convenience stores will. 7-Eleven has adopted self-pay vending machines at almost every location, and the other convenience stores are following suit slowly. And you can use these to re-roll your change for better denominations, but do use some restraint. Don't clog up the whole machine with an entire bag of change. Besides, if you still have a bit more left over, you can always visit another konbini for another snack. And the last thing I'll say about cash is please just don't tip. Now, if there is a tip jar and you really want to, sure, that'll be the exception. There's always an exception to every rule, but don't try and leave money on a table at a restaurant or something. Otherwise, you'll probably find that the staff will run out after you to return your change, and you'll really just be inconveniencing everyone. Tipping isn't the culture here, and let's try and keep it that way. Leave it in your own country. Now the next tip is an absolute lifesaver for people traveling to Japan with large bags or those who filled up their suitcases on those shopping sprees. When using Google Maps, which is the app I recommend for travel in Japan, not only because it has the most accurate directions, but it also recommends you which car on train you should take for the best transfers and exits. But if you simply set the filters to wheelchair accessible, it actually filters out staircases and shows you where the quickest elevators are. Now of course course, you need to use this option with restraint, remember your manners, and be sure to let others in need ahead of you first. But for a solo traveler in the summer with 2 big heavy bags, this will make your life so much easier. Now, this is the one tip that I actually don't use for myself because I don't want to miss out on all those free gains. Japan is a country of walking. The average traveler in Japan puts away 20,000 steps daily, which is why I always recommend comfortable, easy to slip on and off shoes. You don't want to ruin your trip nursing your blistered feet, but having fast and simple to remove shoes is another unspoken rule, because in Japan there is going to be many places that you do need to remove your shoes just to enter. Now, it won't be at the mall or a McDonald's or anything like that, but a fancy restaurant, a person's home, a castle, or even hotels like ryokans, you will need to remove your shoes at the genkan. This is an entrance step which should be very obvious because of all the laid out slippers that you can switch into. Using socks alone is usually fine here as well, because if you're like me, you'll find that those slippers just simply never fit. The important note here is not to wear your outdoor shoes inside, and also not to delay people that are going to be behind you. Complicated laced shoes should be avoided, and sitting down to mess with your shoelaces for more than a few seconds is honestly seen as kind of foolish. So leave those fancy kicks at home and just get something casual. Now, speaking of walking, let's go over one of the most common but also misunderstood unspoken rules, and that's eating while walking. Yes, you'll see this in almost every guide about Japan, but it's kind of very much misunderstood. Japanese people usually don't eat while walking unless they're at a festival or a food street, like Nankinmachi in Kobe or Tsuruhashi in Osaka. This is because of how it relates to trash. If you're walking and eating, then you'll likely be dropping crumbs, and also you'll be left with a wrapper and bags that you're more likely to toss or be forced to carry back to your hotel. It is almost paradoxical how clean Japanese streets are with their lack of trash cans on the streets. Japanese people do take their trash with them, or more often leave it where they bought their food, and that's why you don't see them walking and eating. If you grab some onigiri at the convenience store and you simply stand outside and eat it, you can then return inside and use the provided bins. Likewise, at a festival food stall, which are called yatai, you can eat nearby, then return and hand your trash back to them. There's no problem with this. You can even go up to the next stall where you buy something and give your trash to them there. And this is how the Japanese manage their trash. There's no problem with drinking while walking naturally, or on the train, provided it doesn't have a strong smell. But if you simply must eat while walking, since we all know that walking food contains no calories, then just make sure you do not litter. Of course, there is no law against eating while walking, but people will absolutely judge you for doing so.
Man spotted eating family chicken on the streets. More on this as it develops.
Don't forget your towel, or at least a small hand towel or handkerchief. This is so important if you're outside of the cities, in parks or hiking. Many Japanese public bathrooms do not have hand towels or even hand dryers, because basically everyone in Japan carries their own. It's more hygienic, and they are amazing in summer to wipe away the sweat. But you can also use them to reserve your space in Japan. If you see a table or a chair with a small towel in Japan, it's not lost property, it shows that it is in use. You can use these yourselves when going to a restaurant and going to order, or to show that you'll be right back. Of course, it doesn't need to be a towel. Any small personal item will do. You'll see bags, purses, glasses, phones, even wallets sitting lonely by themselves in Japan. Please just leave these alone if you see them. Don't worry, the owner will return for them, and you can rest assured that anything you leave should be there when you return. Now, of course, I wouldn't recommend you leave anything you wouldn't be okay with losing. That's just common sense. But I have seen Japanese friends leave things like laptops alone for 30 minutes or more with no fear of them being taken. Those absolute mad lads. Public etiquette is important. One thing that you'll notice in Japan, compared to other Asian countries, is just how quiet you'll find it, such as on the train or even outside in the middle of a city street. Provided people aren't just leaving a pub, Japanese society is focused around not making a scene and avoiding confrontation, so be mindful of your surroundings. If you're disturbing someone, then they likely won't tell you, and you'll be making them suffer in silence. A great example of this is that you should watch your backpack on trains. Trains can be massively overcrowded depending on the city and time, so Japanese commuters place their bags on their front. Not because they are expecting to be robbed, but so when they are moving through the tight trains, they don't bump into anyone else unknowingly. You'll notice this immediately the next time you're on a train, now that you know. Also, be sure to yield your seat to the elderly or pregnant, although you should be doing that in every country, especially if you're in the priority seat. Of course, if the train is empty, then there's no problem with sitting there, just provided that you move if it does fill up. When taking photos in public, try not to take photos of any one person in particular and be mindful of private streets which may have warning signs about taking photos. When receiving an invitation in Japan, it's worth taking it with a grain of salt. If you say something like, "I love to go hiking," and a Japanese person replies to you, "Yeah, we should absolutely go hiking sometime," unless they do include a time that they'll be available or some sort of plan towards moving towards that, then it's likely not an actual real invitation, just kind of a nice thought. Of course, you're free to ask them if they have a certain day available, but if they respond that they're busy, or more likely with chotto, then you need to read the air and accept that it probably won't happen. Maybes are almost always a polite no in Japan because saying flat out no is kind of rude. When taking a taxi in Japan, do not open and especially do not close the doors yourself. And the reason is quite interesting. You see, in the past, Japanese taxis were much smaller, which meant the drivers could open the doors for the passenger as a sign of respect. As the world got busier, cars got larger, and opening the doors personally became impractical, slow, and dangerous, so a solution was needed. In 1964, Tokyo was hosting the Olympic Games and tourism was about to skyrocket. The solution was to invent a self-opening and closing car doors so that the driver could quickly and easily open the doors for the customer without leaving the driver's seat. However, if you try to close the doors yourself, it might trick the mechanism into appearing as if the door is still open, which will make the driver unsure whether it's safe to depart, forcing them to leave the car to check and delay your journey. So just make life easier for everyone and enjoy this feature of Japan. The only real exception to this rule is the front passenger seat, which might not always have this feature. Japanese passengers usually sit in the back of the cab, so families or large parties should be aware of this. The way to tell is quite simple. If the driver leans over to open the passenger door for you, then you will need to close it by yourself. However, as luxurious as these Japanese taxis are, I actually do not recommend that you use them that often, unless your trip is under 10 to 20 minutes or even shorter. It is the most expensive form of travel by far. An hour in a taxi is more expensive than flying or even using the Shinkansen. A trip from Narita Airport into the heart of Tokyo in Shinjuku will cost you upwards of 28,500 yen, about $200. And this is why I made my first tip carrying at least 30,000 yen for just such an emergency. Now, if these prices are okay for you, or if you're traveling in a large party of 4 or 5 people, then yeah, maybe, but trains and buses are so much better value. And unfortunately, Japan doesn't really have any cheap rideshare alternatives. Using Uber in Japan will simply summon a taxi at the regular taxi fare due to taxi lobbyists. And to make matters worse, during after hours there is an additional surcharge. What this means is you do not want to miss your last train in Japan. It might surprise you to learn, but Japanese trains end fairly early in the evening, around 11:30 or 12:30. There has absolutely been those nights where I've been having too much fun, miss my last train, end up getting a taxi only to realize the price for a 30-minute ride was 8,000 yen, which is about twice as much as just booking a hotel room for the night. So to avoid just giving your money away to big taxi, just be sure to check out your last train. The language barrier. One of the largest concerns of all of those coming to Japan is, will you be able to find your way and communicate when you get here? And fortunately, there is some good news on this point. Japan decided that for the 2020 Summer Olympic Games in Tokyo, they were going to make the country much more accessible. And while that was, slightly delayed, let's say, they did update basically every directional sign in the country to include both Japanese and English translation. Combining this with modern apps for navigation and translation, and it's really actually quite simple to travel the country and even live in Japan without knowing a word of Japanese. With that said, I do recommend you learn a couple of phrases before coming to Japan. Not only will this show the locals you're making an effort, it will enrich your experience. These only take a couple of minutes to learn. Sumimasen is the most useful phrase you will ever learn. You can use it for saying sorry, excuse me, or grabbing someone's attention. If you're in a restaurant and ready to order, just stick up your hand and give a loud, confident sumimasen. It might feel a bit awkward at first, but it is totally normal. Waiters and bartenders often wait until they hear this. I had a friend come to Japan recently who thought the bartender just personally hated him because he wasn't getting served, but the moment he started using this phrase, he had no more problems. Of course, you should already know arigato, but you can make it more polite by saying domo arigato arigatou gozaimasu, or make it much more casual by just saying domo. Some older people also use this to say hello as well. You could also try saying okini, which is thank you in the Kansai dialect of Osaka, which itself is more casual and friendly, and this could help break the ice since it's rare to hear in Tokyo. Hai is yes in Japan, and while ie is taught as no, it does sound kind of harsh. So you should say daijoubu, which means okay, or a casual no thanks. Like if someone hands you something, you can decline it with a hand gesture and say daijoubu. A couple phrases that might help you out are eigo, wakarimasu ka? Do you understand English? Now, every time I mention this phrase, someone inevitably tells me that it's useless because if they can speak English, you could just ask them in English. But I will defend the use of this one because it does two things. First of all, you are meeting people halfway, and it also gives them the option to reply with a modest answer, such as a little bit. You will then likely discover that they actually have fantastic English, but this is part of the Japanese mindset. It's uncomfortable for them to be overtly proud of their abilities. If you ask them if they can speak English in English, they will likely say no because they aren't confident in their ability, regardless of their skill level, or because they weren't prepared for the question. Using Japanese here can help break down that initial barrier and make them more inclined to help you out. Doko desu ka? Where is the? For example, toire doko desu ka? Where is the toilet? Toire is one of Japan's many loan words, and that's the real secret tip to communicating in Japan. If you find yourself in a sticky situation, you can attempt to elongate words and sentences to see if they make sense. For example, credit card will become kuregit kado. Kuregit kado wa daijoubu desu ka? Is credit card okay? Starbucks would become Starbucksu. Starbucksu wa doko desu ka? Where is the Starbucks? Although people will often also shorten this one to Starba. The thing with this tip is that it kind of feels bad, like you're saying something naughty or you might get yourself cancelled. But I can't stress just how important it is to slow down and simplify your language. Countless times I've seen people in Japan say something like, yeah, can I get a table with me and my friend? I'm just waiting for him, but he'll be along in a second. So yeah, there'll be a table for two. Yeah, I'm traveling from Kyoto to Tokyo. We're on a 5-day trip, so could you just show me where the Shinkansen gates are? That would be fire. Which would then send the staffs into anxiety attacks because they don't know how to help these travelers, when all they really needed to say was just something like, 2 people please, or where is the Shinkansen? Remember, keep it simple, stupid. It probably isn't worth learning how to ask for something special at a restaurant. Basically, what you order is what you get in Japan. It will look exactly like the pictures on the menu, but they will almost never make any substitutions for you. That really isn't a thing here. Some people think Japanese people eat sushi every day, so people that don't like fish are sometimes adverse to travel in Japan, but there is food here for almost every diet. Fried chicken, noodles, soups like ramen are among the most popular. But if you have allergies, you do need to be careful. Lists of allergens are often not displayed on smaller establishments' menus, and waiters themselves likely won't know what ingredients or how it might affect you. Many Japanese also do not really understand the concept of vegetarians or veganism. If you tell the waiter that you don't eat meat, they're probably going to recommend you the fish or the chicken. Sauces used in cooking Japanese food often contain animal products as well. It is very difficult to find vegan options in Japan, but not to worry, as there are some apps that will show you exactly where the restaurants that cater to your diet are, so download these before coming to Japan. Tourists must carry passports with them at all times. You might be worried about losing it, but do not leave it at the hotel. You can be fined over 200,000 yen if you are stopped without it, or even arrested. Now, I've never actually had this happen to myself or anyone I know, but police stops and bag checks do happen here, so it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And on a positive note, you can also actually take advantage of tax-free shopping in Japan by showing your passport at the tax-free counter of participating shops. It does seem that this will be phased out in the future, perhaps in 2026, because tourists were apparently getting too much of a good deal, so enjoy it while it lasts. There is something to do all throughout the year in Japan, particularly with its 4 beautiful and distinct seasons. But there are certain times I just don't recommend for travel: Golden Week and the Obon summer season. Golden Week will take place in spring from April 29th until May 6th, and this is the longest period in Japan depending on how the weekends fall, and it can be about 9 days off. So trains and roads are packed, hotel prices are sky high, and it's just kind of annoying to go anywhere as the nation collectively takes time off to let off steam from a busy year. Obon is a similar situation where people return home to see their families, but it also happens to be in the middle of Japan's brutal and oppressive summers in mid-August. In recent years, temperatures have been shooting up to 40 degrees Celsius or about 104 Fahrenheit with 100% humidity. Heat stroke is a very common occurrence even for the locals, but there are a few key cultural events to see at this time, like Gion Matsuri in Kyoto or Tenjin Matsuri in Osaka. I do have a detailed video on every single month in Japan with what to do, the pros and cons of each, and you can see that here, so absolutely check that out so you know what you'll expect. But there is one mistake that you can absolutely not make in Japan. Now, it's usually fine to make mistakes when traveling until it comes to this one, because it can find you in a Japanese prison. Before coming to Japan, you must check your medication to make sure it's legal in Japan. This might not be a problem if it's less than a 1-month supply and you also have a prescription, but Japan is ridiculously strict when it comes to over-the-counter painkillers as well as certain common medications that can be just normal in your own country. You can check this online and also contact local embassies to confirm before travel, but under no circumstances bring recreational drugs into Japan. You can be arrested and held for up to 3 weeks without even being charged or being allowed to contact the outside world if you're caught with these. And that's just before they even prosecute you. So just leave these at home, do not mess around with this one. And now that you do know what not to do, it's time to learn what's on offer. So let's check out this video with over 70 ideas of things to do in Osaka, and I'll catch you in the next one.